My parents told the doctor to let me die because they'd already planned my funeral. When my kidneys failed for the third time, they were arguing over who gets my car. Then the entire hospital lost power before backup generators roared to life. My wife, the cybersecurity CEO they'd never met, had remotely taken control of the building. Dr. Amanda Cartwright stood at the foot of my hospital bed at 3:17 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, her tablet displaying my latest kidney function results, and asked my parents the question that would change everything. If Daniel's kidneys fail again and his heart stops, do you want us to resuscitate? My mother didn't even look up from her phone. She was scrolling through something, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the screen. How much does resuscitation cost? My father, sitting in the chair by the window, set down his coffee. Actually, we've been thinking about this. We've already made arrangements with Eternal Rest Funeral Home. They're holding a slot for Saturday. It would be a shame to waste the deposit. Dr. Cartwright's expression froze. In 19 years of practicing nephrology, she'd seen families struggle with end-of-life decisions, seen grief manifest in 1,000 different ways. But this was something else entirely. I'm sorry, she said carefully. Are you saying you don't want us to save your son's life because you've already paid for his funeral? We're saying, my mother finally looked up, that Daniel has always been expensive. This hospital stay alone has cost us over $40,000 in deductibles and copays. At some point, we have to be practical. I'd been living what I thought was a normal life for 28 years before my kidneys decided to stage a coordinated rebellion against my body. I was a software developer for a mid-sized tech company in Austin, worked reasonable hours, ate relatively healthy, went to the gym twice a week when I remembered. My parents, Gerald and Linda Hawthorne, were what you'd call comfortably middle class. Dad ran a small insurance agency. Mom was a real estate agent who specialized in luxury homes she'd never be able to afford herself. They'd always been somewhat materialistic, always concerned about appearances and status, but I'd written it off as generational quirks. Everyone's parents are weird in their own way, right? What they didn't know, what nobody except my best friend Kyle knew, was that 6 months ago I'd married the most remarkable woman I'd ever met. Her name was Alexis Vance, and she was the founder and CEO of Sentinel Systems, a cybersecurity firm that protected some of the largest corporations and government agencies in the world. We'd met at a tech conference in San Francisco, where I'd been attending a workshop on cloud architecture, and she'd been the keynote speaker. Her presentation on zero-day vulnerabilities and adaptive threat response had been brilliant, terrifying, and somehow funny. Afterward, I'd worked up the courage to approach her at the hotel bar. We'd talked for 4 hours about everything except work. Books, travel, the weird intersection of technology and philosophy, her obsession with vintage motorcycles, my embarrassing collection of first-edition science fiction novels. 3 months later, she'd proposed to me in a tiny ramen shop in Tokyo at 2 a.m., after we'd spent the evening debugging code together in her hotel room. We'd gotten married at a courthouse in Seattle with Kyle as our witness. No family, no fanfare, just two people who'd found each other against all odds. Why the secrecy? Alexis had been burned before by people who wanted her money, her connections, her influence. She'd learned to keep her personal life absolutely private, to separate Alexandra Vance, the CEO, from Alex, the woman who sang off-key in the shower and cried during Pixar movies. And I understood. I'd never told my parents because I knew exactly what would happen. They'd want to meet her, want to be involved, want to leverage her success for their own social climbing. So we kept it quiet. We had our life together, our tiny, perfect bubble, and that was enough. The kidney problems started 3 weeks ago. I'd been feeling tired, more than usual, sleeping 10 hours and still waking up exhausted. Then came the swelling in my legs, the nausea, the weird metallic taste in my mouth that wouldn't go away. Alexis was in Singapore for a major security conference when I finally admitted something was wrong. She'd wanted to fly home immediately, but I'd insisted I was fine. It was probably just a virus. I'd see a doctor when she got back in 4 days. That was my first mistake. By day 3, I couldn't keep food down. By day 4, I was urinating blood. Kyle found me passed out in my apartment and called 911. The paramedics rushed me to St. David's Medical Center where Dr. Cartwright, a nephrologist with nearly 2 decades of experience, took one look at my labs and admitted me to the ICU immediately. Acute kidney injury, she'd explained, possibly from an autoimmune condition, possibly from an infection, possibly from something genetic we hadn't identified yet. Both kidneys were failing simultaneously. Without immediate dialysis and aggressive treatment, I had maybe 48 hours before complete organ failure. She'd asked for my emergency contacts. I'd given her my parents' information because Alexis was 8,000 miles away and unreachable, stuck in back-to-back presentations and meetings in a completely different time zone. I'd tried calling her, got her voicemail, left a message trying to sound calm and failing miserably. My parents arrived at the hospital 3 hours after Kyle called them. My mother walked in wearing a Chanel suit and carrying a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My father had come straight from a business lunch, smelling like expensive scotch and cigars. "Daniel," my mother said, not hugging me, not touching me, just standing at the foot of my bed looking vaguely inconvenienced. "The nurses said you're in kidney failure. Both of them." "Yes," I managed to say. My throat was dry, my whole body felt wrong, like I was wearing a suit made of lead. They're starting dialysis tonight. How long will you be here? My father asked, checking his watch. It was a Rolex, one he'd bought specifically because he liked telling people he wore a Rolex. They don't know yet. Could be weeks. Could be longer if they can't figure out what's causing it. My mother sighed. Well, this is terrible timing. We have the Henderson Gala on Saturday. Very important networking opportunity. Gerald just landed the Henderson family's insurance portfolio. Sorry to inconvenience you with my organ failure, I said. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, but neither of them seemed to notice the sarcasm. We'll stay for a bit, my father said, sitting down and pulling out his phone. But we can't spend all day here. We have commitments. They stayed for 43 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall, counting down the minutes until they left, and I could stop pretending everything was normal. My first dialysis session started at 8 p.m. that evening. Dr. Raymond Silva, a dialysis specialist with 14 years of experience, explained the process while inserting a temporary catheter into my neck. We're going to filter your blood externally since your kidneys can't do it themselves, he said, his hands steady and professional. You'll feel tired afterward, maybe nauseous, but it should help stabilize your condition while we figure out the underlying cause. The dialysis machine hummed and beeped, pulling blood out of my body, cleaning it and pumping it back in. It felt like being slowly drained, like someone had opened a tap and my energy was just flowing out. 4 hours later, when they finally disconnected me, I felt worse than before. Exhausted, hollow, wrong. But my labs showed improvement. My creatinine levels had dropped from 8.4 to 6.2. Still dangerous, still critical, but moving in the right direction. That night, I finally got through to Alexis. It was 6 a.m. in Singapore, and she answered on the first ring. Daniel? I just saw your messages. What's wrong? What hospital? I told her everything. The kidney failure, the dialysis, the uncertainty about the cause. Her voice went from concern to something harder, more focused. I'm getting on the next flight. I'll be there in 20 hours. You don't have to cut your trip short. I'm okay. I'm stable. You're in kidney failure. You're not okay. I'm coming home. She paused. Have you told your parents about us? No, they're already being weird about the medical bills. If they knew I was married to you, they'd... I stopped, not wanting to finish that sentence. They'd what? They'd make it about them. About your money. About what they could get out of it. I don't want that right now. I just want to get better. Alexis was quiet for a moment. Okay, we'll keep it quiet for now. But Daniel, if anything changes, if you get worse, I need you to tell the doctors I'm your wife and medical proxy. Promise me. I promise. The next 3 days were a blur of dialysis sessions, lab draws, and specialists trying to figure out why my kidneys had suddenly decided to stop working. Dr. Cartwright ordered a kidney biopsy, which showed signs of acute interstitial nephritis, an autoimmune condition where my body was attacking my own kidney tissue. They started me on high-dose steroids and immunosuppressants, trying to calm down my overactive immune system before it destroyed what was left of my kidney function. My parents visited twice, both times for less than an hour, both times spending most of the visit on their phones or complaining about the parking situation. On day 4, my kidneys failed again, completely. My creatinine spiked to 9.8, my urine output dropped to almost nothing, and fluid started backing up into my lungs. I was drowning from the inside. Dr. Cartwright increased my dialysis to every day, sometimes twice a day, trying to keep my blood chemistry stable enough that my heart wouldn't stop. We need to talk about long-term options, she said on day 6, sitting beside my bed with that serious expression doctors get when they're about to deliver bad news. Your kidneys aren't recovering. The steroids aren't working. We need to consider the possibility that you'll need a transplant. How long can I survive on dialysis? I asked. Years, potentially. But quality of life is significantly better with a transplant. Have you talked to your family about living donation? I laughed, which hurt my chest. My parents aren't exactly the self-sacrificing type. What about siblings, extended family? Only child, and my extended family is basically non-existent. My grandparents are dead. My aunt and uncle live in Ireland and we haven't spoken in a decade. Dr. Cartwright made a note in my chart. We'll put you on the transplant list, but the wait can be years. In the meantime, we'll keep you stable on dialysis and hope your kidneys show some sign of recovery. That night, Alexis finally made it home. I heard her before I saw her, her voice sharp and commanding in the hallway outside my room, talking to someone in that tone she used when she was solving problems. Then she was there, standing in my doorway, still wearing her travel clothes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her eyes red from crying or lack of sleep or both. Hey, she said softly, closing the door behind her. Hey yourself. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and wrapped her arms around me carefully, avoiding the IV lines and the dialysis catheter in my neck. She smelled like airplane and coffee and home. I'm sorry, I whispered into her shoulder, for not calling you sooner, for making you cut your trip short. Don't apologize for being sick. Don't ever apologize for needing me. She pulled back, studying my face. You look terrible. You're supposed to say I look good. I'm supposed to be honest. You look like death warmed over. Have they figured out the cause yet? I explained about the autoimmune condition, the failed steroid treatment, the transplant list. Alexis listened with that focused intensity she brought to everything, asking questions about my medication, my prognosis, my treatment plan. I want to talk to your doctors, she said. Get a full briefing on your condition and your options. They won't tell you anything. HIPAA regulations. You're not family, not officially, not as far as they know. Then we tell them. She pulled something out of her bag, a folder with official-looking documents. I brought our marriage certificate, medical proxy paperwork, power of attorney. Everything we need to make sure I can advocate for you. My parents don't know. They can't know. Not yet. Why not? Because they'll make it about them. They'll make it about your money and your company and what they can get out of this situation. I don't have the energy to deal with that right now. Alexis's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Fine. We'll keep it quiet for now. But if they do anything to compromise your care, I'm stepping in. Understood? I understood. Over the next week, my condition yo-yoed between stable and critical. My kidney function would show slight improvement, then crash again. The immunosuppressants were working slowly, but not fast enough. On day 11, I had my second complete kidney failure. Creatinine spiked to 11.2, potassium climbed to dangerously high levels, and my heart started showing irregular rhythms on the monitor. Dr. Silva and Dr. Cartwright worked through the night running emergency dialysis, trying to stabilize me before my heart gave out. My parents showed up the next morning, both dressed for some social event, both annoyed at having to make the trip. The doctor called us at 6 a.m., my mother said, like this was a personal affront. Said you had another crisis. Sorry for almost dying at an inconvenient time. Don't be dramatic, Daniel. You're fine. You're still here. My father was looking around the room, taking inventory. Is that a new laptop? He asked, pointing to the MacBook Pro Alexis had brought me so I could work remotely when I felt well enough. Yeah, a friend lent it to me. Must be some friend. That's a $3,000 machine. He's in tech. He has extras. The lie came easily. Too easily. My mother was scrolling through her phone. Gerald, did you see this? The Blackwood Country Club is having their annual charity auction next month. The Hendersons will definitely be there. We should get a table, my father said. Show face. Network. They were planning their social calendar while I was lying in a hospital bed with failing organs. I wanted to scream, to throw something to make them see me, but I didn't have the energy. They stayed for 22 minutes that time, just long enough to check a box, to say they'd visited their sick son. Dr. Cartwright came by that evening with news. We've identified a potential issue with your immunosuppressant dosing. We may have been too conservative. I'm increasing the medication and adding a second drug to the protocol. It's aggressive, but at this point, aggressive is what we need. What are the risks? The medications suppress your entire immune system, not just the parts attacking your kidneys. You'll be vulnerable to infections, have a higher risk of certain cancers long-term, and the side effects can be significant. But without them, your kidneys will continue to fail. Do it, whatever it takes. The new medication protocol started that night. Within 48 hours, I felt different. Not better exactly, but different. Less inflamed, less like my body was at war with itself. My labs started showing improvement. Small improvements, incremental changes, but improvement nonetheless. By day 15, my creatinine had dropped to 4.8. Still high, still abnormal, but trending in the right direction for the first time since this nightmare began. Dr. Cartwright was cautiously optimistic. Your kidneys are showing signs of recovery. We're not out of the woods yet, but this is the best news we've had since you were admitted. Alexis was there every day, working remotely from my hospital room, taking calls in the hallway, managing sentinel systems from 200 miles away while making sure I ate, slept, and didn't give up hope. We kept our relationship hidden, maintained the fiction that she was just a concerned friend, a tech colleague checking in. The nurses knew something was up, knew there was more to the story, but they respected our privacy. My parents visited 3 more times over the next week. Each visit was shorter than the last, each one more focused on their own lives than mine. On day 19, my mother brought up something that should have been a warning sign. Daniel, we need to talk about your car. I blinked, confused. What about it? Well, if something happens to you, someone needs to know what to do with it. It's a 2019 Mazda CX-5, only 30,000 miles. That's worth at least $22,000. I'm not dead yet, Mom. I know, but we need to be practical. Have you updated your will? Listed beneficiaries? I'm 28 years old. I didn't think I needed a will. Everyone needs a will. Especially now. She pulled out a folder, actual physical paperwork. We had our estate attorney draw something up for you. Just needs your signature. I stared at the documents, my brain struggling to process what was happening. You want me to sign my will while I'm lying in a hospital bed recovering from kidney failure? It's just being responsible, making sure everything is in order. In order for what? For you to inherit my stuff when I die? Don't be dramatic. We're your parents. Of course we'd inherit your estate, but it needs to be official, legal. I didn't sign anything. Told them I needed to read through it, needed to think about it. They left disappointed, like I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. That night, I told Alexis about the will. Her expression went from concerned to dangerous in about 3 seconds. They're planning for you to die. They're literally preparing to divide up your assets. They're just being practical. That's what they said. That's what vultures say when they're circling. She pulled out her phone, started typing furiously. I'm having my attorney draft actual estate planning documents. Everything goes to me as your spouse, with provisions for charitable giving. Your parents get nothing. Alexis? No. I'm not watching them pick over your bones while you're still breathing. This ends now. But it didn't end. It got worse. On day 23, my kidneys failed again. Third time. Complete failure. My creatinine spiked to 12.8, the highest it had ever been. My potassium climbed to 6.9, dangerously close to the level that could stop my heart. Fluid backed up into my lungs, making every breath a struggle. Dr. Cartwright and her team worked frantically, starting emergency dialysis, administering medications to stabilize my heart rhythm, draining fluid from my lungs with a procedure that felt like drowning in reverse. We need to talk about code status, Dr. Cartwright said to my parents, who'd been called in for the emergency. This was at 2:47 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. If Daniel's heart stops, do you want us to perform CPR? Use a defibrillator? Intubate if necessary? My father looked at my mother. She looked at her phone. How much does all that cost? She asked. Dr. Cartwright's expression was stone. We're talking about saving your son's life. We're talking about prolonging the inevitable. Look at him. He's been here almost a month. He's not getting better. He was getting better. This is a setback. But a $200,000 setback, my father interrupted. Do you know what this has cost us? What it's still costing? Our insurance has a $50,000 out-of-pocket maximum, and we hit that in the first week. Everything since then has been out of pocket. Your son is dying. Our son has been expensive his entire life. The private schools, the college tuition, the car we co-signed for, and now this. At some point, we have to think about our own future. I was conscious for this conversation. Barely. Drifting in and out as the dialysis machine hummed and beeped, cleaning blood my kidneys couldn't handle. But I heard enough. Heard my parents discussing my life in terms of dollars and cents. Heard my mother say, actually, Gerald, we already made those arrangements with Eternal Rest Funeral Home, remember? For Saturday. If he's going to pass anyway, it would be a shame to waste the deposit. That's when Dr. Cartwright asked the question. The one about resuscitation. The one my parents answered by saying they'd already paid for my funeral. The room went very quiet. I could hear machines beeping, hear someone's phone buzzing, hear Dr. Cartwright's breath catch like she'd been punched. I need you to clarify, she said slowly. Are you saying you want us to implement a do not resuscitate order for your 28-year-old son because you've already paid for his funeral? We're saying, my mother's voice was ice, that we need to be realistic. He's not going to recover. You said yourself his kidneys aren't responding to treatment. Why prolong this? His kidneys are damaged, not dead. There's still a chance of recovery, a chance for transplant. He could live for decades on dialysis while waiting for a donor. Decades of what? Hooked up to machines? Unable to work? Unable to live a normal life? That's not living. That's existing. That's not your decision to make. We're his next of kin. We're the ones who get to make medical decisions when he can't. Dr. Cartwright looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw her see that I was awake, that I was hearing this. Daniel, she said gently, do you have a medical proxy? Someone you've designated to make decisions if you're incapacitated? I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. My voice was gone. I managed to move my hand, reaching for my phone on the bedside table. Dr. Cartwright understood. She handed it to me. With shaking fingers, I pulled up Alexis's number and hit call. It rang twice before she answered. Daniel? What's wrong? Come, I whispered. Now. Hospital. Parents. I'm 15 minutes away. Hold on. The line went dead. I looked at Dr. Cartwright and nodded. She understood that too. My parents didn't notice any of this. They were too busy arguing with each other about what to do with my car. The Mazda should go to me, my father was saying. I could use a reliable vehicle for business meetings. My current car has 120,000 miles. You already have a car, my mother countered. I should get it. I could use it for showings. Clients are impressed by nice vehicles. It's my car, I tried to say, but the words came out as a croak. Neither of them heard me. They were too busy dividing up my possessions like I was already dead. Dr. Cartwright excused herself, leaving my parents to their macabre negotiations. I lay there, feeling my body failing. Feeling my heart struggling to maintain rhythm, feeling my kidneys shutting down for the third time. And through it all, I listened to my parents argue over who deserved my car more. Time moved strangely when you're dying. Seconds stretched into hours, hours compressed into moments. I watched the clock on the wall. 2:53 p.m., 2:54, 2:55. At 2:58 p.m., my heart monitor started alarming. Irregular rhythm. My potassium had climbed too high, disrupting the electrical signals that kept my heart beating steadily. Dr. Silva rushed in with a crash cart, started pushing medications through my IV, trying to stabilize me before my heart stopped completely. My parents moved to the corner of the room, out of the way, watching like spectators at a sporting event. "If this is it," my mother said to my father, quiet, but not quiet enough, "we should call eternal rest. Make sure they're ready." Good thinking. "And we'll need to contact the insurance company about the death benefit. There's a $100,000 life insurance policy through his employer. That should cover the funeral costs and then some." My heart rate was dropping. 89 beats per minute. 76. 63. Dr. Silva was shouting orders. "Get me the defibrillator. Prepare for cardiac arrest. Someone page Dr. Cartwright back here now." At 3:02 p.m., as my heart rate hit 41 and continued dropping, something happened that I didn't understand until later. Every light in the hospital went out. Not just my room, not just the ICU, the entire building. Complete darkness. For 3 seconds, there was nothing. No lights, no monitors, no machines. Just darkness and silence and the feeling of my heart struggling to beat. Then, the backup generators kicked in, but they didn't just restore power. They roared to life with a sound like thunder, like something massive and powerful had awakened. The lights came back on, but different, brighter, harsher. Every screen in my room flickered and then displayed the same thing. A logo I recognized. Sentinel Systems. Alexis's company logo. On the heart monitor. On the IV pump display. On the tablet Dr. Silva was holding. On my parents' phones. Everywhere. And then a message appeared, scrolling across every screen in the room. "Medical override in effect. All systems now under Sentinel control. Patient Daniel Hawthorne is under protection." My father's phone started ringing. So did my mother's. So did the phone at the nurse's station, all of them at once, a cacophony of ringing that filled the entire floor. Dr. R. Silva stared at his tablet like it had grown teeth. What the hell is happening? The elevator at the end of the hall dinged. Once, twice, 3 times, doors opening and closing, and then I heard footsteps. Fast, purposeful, military precise. Alexis appeared in my doorway and she wasn't alone. She was flanked by 4 people in dark suits, all carrying tablets and looking like they could kill you with a paperclip. Behind them came 2 more people in business attire, both carrying briefcases that screamed, "Lawyer." And behind them, someone I recognized from the news. David Thornton, Chief Technology Officer of St. David's Medical Center. His face was pale, his hands were shaking, and he looked like he'd just witnessed something impossible. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his voice cracking, "we didn't know you were connected to this patient. If we'd known—" "You do now," Alexis said, her voice cold enough to freeze helium. She walked into my room, her eyes scanning the monitors, taking in my condition, assessing threats with the same precision she brought to cybersecurity work. "Status," she said to Dr. Silva. "Heart rate 38 and dropping. Potassium toxicity causing arrhythmia. We were preparing for cardiac arrest." "You're not anymore. Get me Dr. Raymond Blackwell from Massachusetts General. Tell him Alexis Vance needs a consult on acute hyperkalemia with cardiac involvement. He'll come." "Ma'am, it's Friday afternoon. He's in his office. I already called him. He's standing by for a video consult. Someone get me a screen that's not displaying my company logo." One of the suited individuals stepped forward with a tablet. Alexis took it, swiped through something, and within 30 seconds, Dr. Blackwell's face appeared on the screen. He was exactly what you'd expect from a world-renowned nephrologist. Gray hair, kind eyes, the expression of someone who'd seen everything and could fix most of it. "Alex," he said, using the familiar form of her name. "Show me the patient." Alexis held the tablet so Dr. Blackwell could see me, see the monitors, see my current state. He asked rapid-fire questions. Dr. Silva answered them. Together, they developed a protocol that was more aggressive than anything that had been tried so far. "Calcium gluconate, insulin with dextrose, and albuterol nebulizer," Dr. Blackwell instructed. "That should stabilize his potassium levels enough to prevent cardiac arrest. Then we need to talk about his long-term management." While Dr. Silva rushed to implement the new treatment protocol, Alexis finally turned to face my parents. They'd been standing in the corner, mouths open, phones still displaying the Sentinel Systems logo, trying to process what was happening. "Who are you?" my father asked. "I'm Alexis Vance, Daniel's wife." The room went dead silent. "Wife?" My mother's voice was shrill. "Daniel's not married. He would have told us." "He didn't tell you because you didn't need to know. But now you do." She gestured to one of the people in suits. "This is Margaret Chu, my attorney. She's going to explain some things." Margaret stepped forward, opening her briefcase and pulling out documents. She was in her 50s, had the kind of face that suggested she won every argument she ever entered. And her voice carried authority that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. "Daniel and Alexis Hawthorne Vance were married 6 months ago," she began. "All legal documentation is in order. Marriage certificate, medical proxy designation, power of attorney. As of this moment, all medical decisions regarding Daniel are made by his wife, not by his biological parents." "That's not possible," my father said. "We're his next of kin." You were his next of kin. Now his wife is. And she's revoking any authority you had over his medical care. You can't do that. Actually, she can. It's already done. You have no legal standing here anymore. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. This is ridiculous. Daniel, tell them this is some misunderstanding. I managed to lift my hand, made a gesture that Alexis understood. She came to my side, took my hand, and I squeezed it once. Confirmation. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile a predator makes before it strikes. Furthermore, Margaret continued, we'll be pursuing legal action for attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult and medical decision-making in bad faith. The hospital has provided us with recordings of your conversations regarding funeral arrangements and asset division while your son was still alive and undergoing treatment. Recordings? My father's face went red. That's illegal. HIPAA violations. Actually, hospital security footage and audio recordings of public conversations in a medical facility are completely legal and will be admissible in court. We have you on record discussing funeral arrangements and arguing over your son's car while he was in acute kidney failure. One of Alexis's suited associates stepped forward. I'm Robert Kensington, Chief Legal Officer for Sentinel Systems. We're also reviewing your attempt to have Mr. Hawthorne sign estate documents while incapacitated, which constitutes elder abuse statutes even though he's not technically elderly. The attempted coercion of a vulnerable medical patient is a felony in Texas. My mother's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face went white. Gerald, check your phone. They both looked at their screens, and I watched the color drain from their faces. What is that? My father whispered. That, Alexis said, is your financial history for the past 6 months. Credit card statements showing $60,000 in luxury purchases while simultaneously claiming you couldn't afford your son's medical care. Country club memberships, designer clothes, a week-long vacation to the Bahamas you took 3 days before Daniel was admitted to the hospital. How did you get that? That's private. Nothing is private when you threaten someone I love, Alexis said simply. I'm a cybersecurity expert. Getting your financial records was easier than ordering coffee. And before you scream about illegal hacking, everything I obtained was through completely legal means. Subpoenas, court orders, and cooperation from your credit card companies, who were very interested to learn about potential fraud. Fraud? My mother's voice cracked. You claimed on your insurance applications that you had limited financial resources. You claimed hardship exemptions. You claimed you couldn't afford supplemental coverage. Meanwhile, you're spending $5,000 a month on luxury goods and entertainment. That's insurance fraud, and I've already reported it to the state insurance commissioner. David Thornton, the hospital CTO, stepped forward. He'd been standing in the hallway this entire time, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Mrs. Vance, about the hospital systems. Oh yes, that. Alexis pulled out her phone, swiped through something, and suddenly all the screens in the room returned to normal. Medical monitors showing actual patient data instead of her company logo. Sorry about the dramatic entrance. I needed to ensure Daniel's medical care wasn't going to be compromised by people more concerned with funeral deposits than his survival. You shut down the entire hospital. I did not. I temporarily took control of the electrical system, the patient monitoring network, and the administrative computers. The hospital never lost power. The backup generators coming online was just me being theatrical. She smiled. I like to make an entrance. You could have caused patient deaths. That kind of interference was completely isolated to non-critical systems and lasted approximately 45 seconds. I'm very good at what I do, Mr. Thornton. Nobody was harmed, except possibly the egos of some people in this room. She looked at my parents, which was entirely intentional. Dr. Cartwright returned then, having been summoned by the chaos. She took one look at the crowd in my room, at Alexis standing beside my bed, at my parents looking like they'd been run over by a truck, and her expression shifted to something like satisfaction. I see you've met Mrs. Hawthorne Vance, she said. I have, Alexis replied. Thank you for the call. I appreciate you advocating for my husband when his own parents wouldn't. Just doing my job. Speaking of which, I need to update you on Daniel's condition and treatment plan. Please, I want to know everything. They spent the next 20 minutes discussing my medical situation. The potassium crisis was stabilizing thanks to Dr. Blackwell's intervention protocol. My kidney function was still critically low but not deteriorating further. The immunosuppressants were working, just slower than anyone wanted. Dr. Cartwright recommended continued aggressive dialysis, close monitoring, and consultation with the transplant team, even though I was already on the waiting list. What about living donation? Alexis asked. Is that viable? It would be ideal. Tissue typing would need to be done. But if you're a match, test me. Today. Now. Whatever it takes. My mother made a sound, something between a gasp and a protest. Alexis turned to look at her. Something you want to say, Linda? You barely know him. You've been married 6 months. You're going to give him a kidney? Yes. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You sacrifice. You give. You don't calculate the cost-benefit analysis of keeping them alive. That's not fair, my father said. We were just being practical. You were planning his funeral while he was still breathing. You were dividing up his possessions while his heart was failing. That's not practical, Gerald. That's monstrous. Margaret Chu stepped forward again. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, you're no longer welcome in this hospital. Security has been notified that you're to be escorted from the premises immediately and banned from returning. Any attempt to contact Daniel will be considered harassment and will be prosecuted. You can't do this! We can, and we have. Your son is an adult. His wife is his legal medical proxy. You have no rights here. Please leave before security removes you by force. They left. Not gracefully, not quietly, but they left. My father tried to argue, threatened to call lawyers, threatened to go to the media. My mother cried, actual tears, but they felt performative. Designed to manipulate rather than express genuine emotion. Security escorted them to the elevator. The doors closed on their faces, and they were gone. The room suddenly felt lighter, easier to breathe, even with my failing kidneys and struggling heart. Alexis sat beside my bed, took my hand carefully, avoiding the IV lines. Hey, she said softly. Hey, I managed to whisper, my voice still weak. Sorry about the dramatic entrance. I know you wanted to keep things quiet. You took over the entire hospital. I may have gotten a little carried away. In my defense, they were literally planning your funeral while you were still alive. That seemed worth a dramatic response. I smiled. It hurt, but I smiled. Dr. Cartwright cleared her throat. I'm going to leave you two alone, but Mrs. Vance, I do need to speak with you about the hospital system intrusion. While I appreciate the intervention on behalf of your husband, we can't have people taking control of our infrastructure, even temporarily. I understand. I'll have my team prepare a full security audit of your systems, free of charge, detailing every vulnerability I exploited and how to fix them. Consider it my apology for the inconvenience. Actually, that would be incredibly valuable. I know. I'm very good at apologizing while simultaneously proving I'm right. Over the next 3 days, the tissue typing results came back. Alexis was a near-perfect match. 6 out of 6 HLA markers matched, which was almost unheard of in unrelated donors. Dr. Cartwright called it a miracle. The transplant team called it extraordinarily lucky. Alexis called it fate. We were meant to find each other, she said, sitting beside my bed the night before the transplant surgery. The universe doesn't give you a 6 out of 6 match by accident. You don't have to do this. The risks are minimal compared to what you're facing. I'm healthy, I'm young, I can live a completely normal life with 1 kidney. You need this. End of discussion. The surgery was scheduled for the following morning. Dr. Patricia Lansing, chief of transplant surgery at St. David's with 22 years of experience, would perform both operations. My kidney removal and Alexis's kidney removal simultaneously, in adjoining operating rooms, then the transplant into me. Success rate for living donor transplants is over 95%, Dr. Lansing explained. With a match this good, we're looking at excellent long-term outcomes. Your body should accept the kidney readily, and with proper immunosuppression, you could have normal kidney function for decades. The surgery took 8 hours. I don't remember most of it, just the anesthesia pulling me under and then waking up in recovery with a dull ache in my side and the most beautiful feeling I'd experienced in months. No nausea, no exhaustion, no feeling of drowning from the inside. How do you feel? Dr. Cartwright asked, checking my vitals. Different. Better. Weird. Your new kidney is already producing urine. Your creatinine is dropping. Everything is looking exactly how we want it to look. Alexis was in the recovery room next to mine, separated by a curtain. I could hear her talking to her nurses, making jokes about having matching scars now, asking when she could get back to work. They wheeled her bed next to mine an hour later, so we could recover together. She looked tired, pale, but her eyes were bright and fierce. Hey, kidney buddy, she said. Hey yourself, how are you feeling? Like I just had major surgery to save my husband's life. Pretty good, actually. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough for this. You already did. You married me. You trusted me enough to tell me about your family. You let me be the one to fight for you when you couldn't fight for yourself. That's all the thanks I need. We stayed in the hospital for 5 more days, recovering side by side. The transplant was a complete success. My new kidney, Alexis's kidney, functioned perfectly. My creatinine levels normalized. My potassium stayed stable. For the first time in over a month, I felt like a human being instead of a collection of failing systems. My parents tried to visit on day 3. Security turned them away. They tried to call. We blocked their numbers. They sent flowers. We had them donated to the children's ward. On day 4, Margaret Chu arrived with news. The insurance fraud investigation is moving forward. The State Insurance Commissioner's office has opened a formal case against Gerald and Linda Hawthorne. They're facing up to 5 years in prison and $100,000 in fines. Good, Alexis said. What about the attempted exploitation charges? Those are harder to prove criminally, but we have a strong civil case. We're suing for emotional distress, attempted undue influence, and breach of fiduciary duty. Conservative estimate, we're looking at a $500,000 judgment. I don't want their money, I said. I just want them out of my life. The judgment isn't about money, it's about consequences. It's about making sure they understand that what they did was wrong and that they can't do it to anyone else. The trial for the civil case happened 6 months later. I was healthy by then, back to work, back to running, back to living a normal life with Alexis and one perfectly functioning kidney. The courtroom was packed with reporters. The story had gone viral online. Son sues parents who planned his funeral while he was still alive. The media loved it. My parents showed up with an expensive attorney, someone they'd clearly overpaid using money they didn't have. Their lawyer tried to argue that they'd been making difficult medical decisions under stress, that they'd been worried about financial ruin, that they'd never actually wanted me to die. Margaret destroyed every argument with evidence. Hospital recordings of their conversations, financial records showing their luxury spending, text messages between them discussing my inevitable death and how to divide my assets. The testimony that broke the case came from Dr. Cartwright. She took the stand wearing her professional demeanor like armor and methodically detailed every interaction she'd had with my parents. They asked about the cost of resuscitation before asking if their son was okay. They discussed funeral arrangements while he was having a cardiac crisis. They attempted to implement a do not resuscitate order for a 28-year-old man with a treatable condition because they'd already paid for his funeral. In 19 years of medical practice, I have never seen such callous disregard for a patient's life. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. They found in my favor on all counts: emotional distress, attempted undue influence, breach of fiduciary duty. The judgment was $650,000 more than Margaret had estimated. We donated every penny to the National Kidney Foundation and a fund for families struggling with medical bills. My parents declared bankruptcy 6 months later. The insurance fraud case was still pending, but their reputation was destroyed. My father's insurance agency lost all its major clients. My mother's real estate license was suspended pending ethics review. They tried to reconcile, sent letters through their attorney asking for forgiveness, asking for another chance. I never responded. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. A year after the transplant, Alexis and I renewed our vows. This time, it wasn't a secret courthouse ceremony. It was a small gathering at a botanical garden, surrounded by the people who actually mattered. Kyle was there, the friend who'd saved my life by calling 911. Dr. Cartwright was there, the doctor who'd fought for me when my own parents wouldn't. Margaret Chu was there, the lawyer who'd made sure justice was served. And Alexis was there, wearing a simple white dress, standing across from me with tears in her eyes and a smile that could light up the world. "I promise," she said during her vows, "to always choose you, to always fight for you, to always be the person who lands the helicopter when you need saving. I promise," I said, "to never doubt that you'll come, to never take for granted that I found someone who would literally give me a kidney. To love you with everything I am, even the parts you gave me." We kissed, and everyone cheered, and I thought about how a year ago I'd been dying in a hospital bed while my parents argued over who got my car. Now I was here, alive, healthy, married to the woman who'd saved me in every way a person can be saved. The universe is weird like that. Sometimes the family you're born into fails you. Sometimes they're so focused on money and status and material things that they forget the most basic human obligation, to love and protect the people who depend on you. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find a family that chooses you. A wife who takes over a hospital to save you. Friends who call 911 when you're unconscious. Doctors who fight for your life even when your parents won't. That's the family that matters. Not the one you're born into, but the one you build. 3 years later, I'm sitting in our house in Austin, working from home, because Alexis convinced me to quit my corporate job and do consulting work that lets me set my own hours. My kidney, the one Alexis gave me, is functioning perfectly. My creatinine levels are normal. My immunosuppressant dosages have been reduced to maintenance levels. I'm healthier now than I was before the kidney failure, more conscious of what matters, more grateful for every day. Alexis is upstairs on a video call, probably solving some cybersecurity crisis in Hong Kong or London or wherever needs her expertise at the moment. I can hear her voice, confident and competent, taking control of whatever situation requires her attention. My parents are somewhere in Arizona, living in a small apartment, working whatever jobs they could find after their bankruptcy and fraud convictions. We haven't spoken in 3 years. I don't plan to ever speak to them again. Some people say you should forgive family. That blood is thicker than water. But they forget the full saying, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The relationships you choose, the people who show up when you need them, those bonds are stronger than biology. I chose Alexis. She chose me. And when I was dying, when my parents were planning my funeral and arguing over my car, she took over an entire hospital to make sure I survived. That's love. Not the greeting card version, not the social media performance, but real love that shows up, that fights, that sacrifices, that refuses to let you die because someone else decided you were too expensive to save. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.